So I'm really happy to introduce our panelists. Um, and Karen, if you can put us in a spotlight view. Um, First, let me introduce Tanya, who is the head of business development and marketing for Edwin Co. She's with Edwin Co. in London. Tanya is a veteran law firm marketing person. Um, she has 20 years plus doing this, but she still has fresh creative ideas. And I've got to work with her on a couple of projects and insisted that she participate in this session. I also want to introduce Jessica Grayson, who's with Philip Neiser in New York. She's the Chief Business Development Officer. She is a speaker and a writer on these topics frequently, and she comes to Phillips Neiser after a tour of duty at Morgan Lewis and another large Philadelphia firm that I know well and have a lot of respect for. And finally, I want to introduce to you Joe Caffrey. Joe is the Chief Marketing Officer at Varnum in Michigan. He is also a longtime marketing business development specialist inside of law firms, and he spent more than a decade with a New York-based international firm before moving to Michigan and beginning work for Varnum. Both Jessica and Joe are maybe a year and a half in their position, and Tanya's been with Edwin Co. for a longer period of time. So I just want to start with a question for our panelists, and you're all welcome, panelists, to unmute. So we were talking a bit before the session about the idea that maybe introverts in ally law firms have more time to do marketing, and all three of you said, gosh, we haven't had that much downtime. Maybe you could talk for just a moment about a little bit more about that. I think lots of people expected that there would be a big slump as the pandemic rolled in, but it sounds like that maybe hasn't been entirely what your firm's experienced. Are there some areas that are stronger, more busy? Others that might be a bit slower? Tanya?
Well, I'll take that question. Thanks, Wendy. Nice to meet you all, everybody. So I would say, I mean, our litigation team's obviously still delivering on the work that they won pre-COVID, so that is not yet dried up. So not concern, but my question to them is, you need to be looking at what's coming in post that as well. So our other areas that were sort of slightly lighter was our labour employment side. They went light for a while, and then obviously now redundancy, etc., restructurings come in for them. Again, on our corporate side, the deals went quiet, then the deals started up again. The last couple of weeks, it's gone a little bit quieter again.
Great.
So yeah, that's where we stand at the moment.
And Joe, what about Varnum?
Yeah, I would say similar trends we're seeing here. I think as no surprise to anyone, the mix has certainly shifted for us ever since COVID started. We're all, as we talked about in our pre-call, there's never been more content coming out of law firms, and I think that's true really across the board is what we're seeing for ally firms as a whole. I think in terms of practice mix, one of the most interesting aspects that we've seen is the shifting within clients. So, for example, if you take in the labor and employment realm as one area, a lot of typical clients that you would see as an A client in terms of being super busy and regular, some of that work is not as busy as you would expect, whereas the level B or level C client that typically wouldn't have as much volume is really starting to increase. And perhaps it's a reflection of infrastructure and things like that, but it's something that we're seeing across the board, and it's something that's an important point of what we're talking about with our lawyers in terms of, there's no client that isn't worth reaching out to in this moment, and that really the experience that you can offer in a time of crisis is very unique. And so to not be so limited in terms of just sticking with A team type clients.
Great. Jessica, same question.
Very similar to Tanya and Joe. You know, we saw some practices slow down that were pretty strong and busy, but with courts closing down, litigation pretty much came to a halt, or any court appearances came to a halt unless they were, you know, close to wrapping up or emergency matters. We did see a big uptick in labor and employment, more on the consulting side. Employers calling and saying, I'm lost in this maze of, you know, if someone's sick, do I send them home? Do I pay them? Or what are they eligible for? How do I help them? It was more of a, how are we helping our employees, rather than how am I protecting my business, which we thought was just really refreshing, to help our clients navigate helping their employees and also, you know, keeping the lights on. Real estate shifting from, you know, maybe acquisitions to lease negotiations. So we just really, you know, pivoted and changed. We also have a large private client practice, so trust in estates and family law were particularly busy, because people wanted to get their affairs in order, or there were all of these issues with families now completely uprooted, where, you know, mom now lives in a different state because she got out of the city, and how do the custody agreements, you know, so there were all different types of changes and upticks in areas that we hadn't predicted, you know, other than COVID. But one of the really just surprising things for me was the willingness for the lawyers to pick up the phone and call me and say, you know, what should I be doing right now? What can we be doing to change, you know, our approach, rather than, you know, what we've normally been doing. And, you know, the difference between the extroverts and the introverts, if you will, is the extroverts called me immediately. They panicked first, right? Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to be networking. I'm supposed to be going to this conference or meeting this person or meeting that person. Where I think the introverts were a little bit more comfortable in the beginning, but they did call later on with their own unique issues.
Thank you. And let me pick up on a point that one of you raised, and you said that the content has become more important. So what I'd like is if you could comment on what's the biggest change that you find in marketing or business development for your lawyers in the pandemic, and then give me an example of a tactic inspired by that change that's working for you. And let me start with, we'll go backwards in order. We'll go Joe, Jessica, Tanya.
Sure. So on the content front, it's an interesting conundrum. So I think marketers have always asked for more content from their lawyers, and it's always been a struggle to get content. We know that hasn't.
Time out. And by content, you mean more writing, more speaking?
More writing, more speaking, a bigger willingness to be pitched for media and things like that. And so COVID created this flood of content. We're all writing, frankly, about similar things, particularly at the federal level, in the U.S. at least. State by state, there are some variances. So I think the really important thing that we've tried to focus on is being hyper-specific with our content and being really descriptive, even in email subject lines, as to why should someone open this? Why should someone care? And at the same time, we've all sort of, I think most firms have put out COVID newsletters at least during the heart of this. You know, I think it's not enough just to have your collection of links saying, here are our advisories. It's really almost like the New York Times deal book or other sort of bigger newsletters. You have to give people a digest, and you have to give them a reason to actually open up your email, because chances are they're receiving something similar from one of our competitors, and really giving someone a reason to actually open up the email, read the content, and engage with it is critical, because otherwise it's just another piece of information that's floating on the internet. So that's something we've been focused on.
Great. Jessica, what's changed? And give me an example of a tactic that's worked with your new reality.
Sure. So, our introverts were our writers to begin with, because that's how they like to market. That's how they can provide value when they're uncomfortable out there, networking and socializing. So we definitely saw an uptick in the beginning of COVID-related newsletters, but the tactic of we would post it on LinkedIn, we would post it on our website. We created a client newsletter that would go out every other week with substantive materials, stripping away the congratulatory type items that we normally would put in there so that we didn't appear to be tone deaf, but they've come back. We've put them back in, but right at the heart of the pandemic, when we were in the last wave, we stripped those types of things out, but we encouraged our lawyers to take this specific legal alerts that would be important to their clients or referral sources, and send them personally with a note, with a why, with a here's I'm thinking of you and I hope all is well. It was an opportunity to do a personal check-in. Of course, everyone was calling everyone and saying hello and checking in with their contacts. But here's another way to say, I understand your business. I understand the challenges that may be facing you, or here's some challenges maybe you didn't even think of. But I'm here to talk, but just thought that you might want to see this. So taking it that extra step and sending it with a personal note was helpful. We've done a lot more webinars, CLEs, presentations, and what has been surprising is the number of people that we get attending is huge compared to what we used to have if we had an in-office event, where sometimes you'd get 25, 30 people. Now you have 70 people signing up and 60 coming, and 59 of them stay the entire time, because people have more time to attend virtual events, because it's not like, oh, well, I have to go all the way across town, and then I have to come back to the city, and this you just log in and you can go and see the presentation, and then get your CLE credits or whatever it is. And we're changing the times of things to be more mindful of when people are available, especially when they have children at home, when schools are closed. Lunchtime is not a good time anymore, because that's the time that school breaks, around us, and parents are busy, with that break time. So we're doing more in the late afternoons, which seem to be a better time for people. So just kind of changing the way we're sending the materials, and the manner in which we're hosting them has made a big difference for us.
Great, thank you. Tanya.
For us, I think the two biggest things that changed for us with the first lockdown for us was our introverts came out with the writing, like Jessica said. I mean, we used to produce probably about 6 or 7 blogs a month, probably across the different practice areas. We were doing that per day, literally per day. It was just immense, and yeah, it was. I still can't get over it, but yeah. So the introverts came out there, but my extroverts were like, I need to see people, like Wendy mentioned. It's like, where are we going? What are we doing? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be virtual conferences. Who can comprehend that? But we're all on one now. So so very quickly, we'd never delivered on webinars before. It had always been on my to-do list, as a long list that there's always there. And within 2 weeks, I had a webinar product. We use Zoom. There's loads of them out there. They're not expensive at all. So we went straight on to doing that, and we partnered for the first one. We partnered with someone else who had their product already, and we provided the talk on that. And from there, it sort of gave me the scope and the confidence to sort of see how Edwin Coe needed to do it. And then from then onwards, we host our own. I think the most we've had on ours is nearly 300 people. We've reached out. With all my extroverts, we just went out to the different bodies that each one was involved with, depending on what type of law they were in. I reached out to the London Chamber of Commerce before they were even doing their webinars. They're doing a great program now, but yeah, it was even pre them setting up their own program. One webinar that we, well, a series that we were involved in, there was 900 people right at the beginning. It was a construction. What on earth's going on in construction industry? You know, that was a big one. And we provided the lawyer to talk on that. So, you know, we've had some really big exposure, just piggybacking and being part of the panel of speakers, just with industry bodies that we're connected with. So we just really touched all the bodies, seeing who was going to start being visible as quickly and as rapidly as possible. Who needed a lawyer? I can find you one. What's the subject? You know, what type of law? So that's what we did, you know. Now, and you know, it's sort of scaling back a little bit now. We're still moving forward, but you know, we work a lot with accountancy firms. We've got one that I'm trying to set up with accountancy firm for January now, with some big high street retail stores as the speakers. So we'll be the lawyer, they'll be the accountant, and we've got these client speakers as well. So it's just great exposure on the back, piggybacking on the back of client names as well. So we're doing that. I mean, another one where if you don't necessarily have to be an extrovert to do this is just to use, you know, your Zoom account and offer up to do an update on something that's come through. We've got, you know, new insolvency rules that have come out. So one of our partners has reached out to individually each one of his top referring accountants and said, would you like me to, you know, to Zoom and give an update to your partners within your firm, or your, you know, anyone within your firm? And he's done that 6 times now, the same set of slides. I don't have to change them. I just change the date on the front, and he just delivers the same slides every time. You know, it's really simple, but it gives him great exposure, great impact. But just to finish up on that, the blogging that we did, this generated, we've done some stats already. We had a 42% increase in our website traffic
Wow.
first half of the year, just based on the amount of people that, because if you remember it, blogs had come through whilst you're sitting there at night time, and you look at it just in case someone knew something more than you did, you know, at that moment in time, because news was just so precious when we were at the beginning of the pandemic. So so we definitely tried to help our clients, our prospects, and our key referrers with just keeping them up to date with, if anything changed legally, this was our interpretation of it. But yeah, that's what we did.
So let me ask this. You mentioned blog posts. If you could each maybe give me just a few tips for people that are on this call that haven't done blog posts before. What makes a good blog post? Whoever wants can jump in.
Yeah, I'll go that first on that. I mean, we spoke previously to the whole audience. We spoke previously about it isn't a technical update. If you're producing a technical update, that should go to an in-house lawyer. If you're, what you should be thinking about is write that technical update and then turn it into sending it to Aunt Sally, or, you know, Auntie Jen, or whatever. How does he or she knows how to interpret that? You need to understand who your audience is you're trying to reach with that update or that blog. And that's why it's very good, because the marketing team get to read all of them. And then if we don't understand them, then no one else has got a chance of understanding them. So we're the first guinea pig, if you like, to test any of the blogs. If they're too technical, we just have to ask them to change that paragraph. It's just over my head. I don't get it. So that's what I would say. Just try and keep it simple, because people don't want in-depth legal advice in a blog. They just need to know, oh my God, that's my issue. Oh yes, that relates to me. Oh my God. And then you want them to reach out to you after just reading your blog. So it doesn't have to be big.
What about length of post, Jessica or Joe?
I agree with what Tanya said. You know, we read the blogs or the legal alerts, and I strike entire paragraphs and say it's too long. It should be 1 page, you know, 1.5 space, 1 page, 1.5 pages with our contact information at the end. And it should be simple, some bullet points in there. It's really just to give people an idea of what they should be thinking about, or ideas about what may be important to them or their business. It should not be there to give them in-depth legal analysis of particular issues, particularly issues that are changing, day to day when we're in the height of the pandemic.
So let me ask, Joe, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think to echo the comments from Tanya and Jessica, the shorter the better. People don't like to read, so get to the point, bullets, checklists. And one of the things that we've been trying to do more of is also incorporating an FAQ type component to it. And by doing that and working with a technical expert that we retain from the SEO perspective, you can get a big boost in terms of your Google results if you use a Q&A sort of markup from an SEO perspective. And so sometimes we're finding that we're having blog posts or advisories in that format, and they show up, if you do a Google search, it shows up in that snippet, like what is an estate plan? Then you see up top, here's the source, here's the answer to your question. So I think there's a lot of room for that in particular, and we've seen some really good results with that. So I'd encourage people to look at adopting FAQ where it makes sense.
So let me ask this question, one that I used to hear a lot when I was in-house, especially from introverts. I'd get the feedback of, well, I don't want to do this because my client's going to be bothered when they receive this. I don't want to bother and interrupt them. And if they have a question about this new bankruptcy law, they'll let me know. They'll call me. So if you could answer your perspective on, is this bothering clients? And then secondly, does this work to generate leads that result in new billable work? Things like blogs and webinars. So whoever wants to jump in first.
I'll take that first if you want. I had that same question posed to me by my senior equity partners on Friday. I've got some that are totally for blogging and some that just think it only generates low value inquiries. Why are we wasting our time? But I think you still have to do it because it shows it's profile raising. It's raising the firm's profile, the author's profile, the practice area's profile, and also it allows other people within the firm to share that update or blog with their network. So there's so much scope for anything that you produce. Also, looking at our statistics, some of our most viewed blogs over the last 2 months have been blogs over a year old because the SEO is working. We just think it's so funny, that something from so long ago is working, but because people aren't able to meet face to face as much now, they are using Google. They're trying to find their answer a little bit more via Google. And if you've got good SEO on your website, you've got updated blogs, alerts, fact sheets, press releases, whatever medium you've used, or it might be inbuilt into the body of your website pages, they will come up in a Google search. And then you'll be, as long as you're on the first couple of pages, you're likely to be, viewed by somebody looking for that exact search term. So they are valuable.
Jessica or Joe, does this generate work that you might not have gotten otherwise?
I'm happy to jump in. I would say yes, it does. In terms of, I don't have a fancy stat on it in terms of lead conversion, but I would say it's probably 1 in 10 for a conversion rate. We see, especially over the past 6 months, people aren't afraid to email a lawyer with a query. And like I said before, in terms of client mix changing, and to echo Tanya's point, having good SEO does bring people to your door, and then it's sort of incumbent on partnering with your lawyers to get them through that door. I think the other point in terms of is it worth doing, there's certainly, I think there's two classes of advisories or blogs. One are the real unique areas where you have true value to offer. And the other are just sort of a cost of doing business where that your competitors are going to be writing about this. There's a big new law or some other major change, and you have to put out something so that you're not seen as not being up on the latest trends and developments. And those aren't the most fun advisories for lawyers or marketing teams to work on. Part of the challenge there is making it interesting, but I think that having that clear communication with lawyers and with partners in terms of, what is this opportunity and why are we doing it? Kind of getting to that root question can be really impactful with how you shape your content.
Great. Jessica, any comments on this topic?
Well, Tanya and Joe have covered a lot, and I agree with everything they said. In addition to, the way we're writing our articles or blogs or putting programs together, we're being strategic about partnering with other firms, other lawyers, accounting firms, wealth management firms to write articles with us so that we hit a broader audience, that we're talking about the topic from different ways. We've brought in, mental health professionals to help us write some of our blogs to give a different perspective, so that we're hitting, like I said, a different audience, but we're also getting interest from potential lateral partner candidates, in addition to, clients and referral sources based on the different content that we're putting out.
Really helpful. Excellent. Let me ask this. If one of our members on this call hasn't gotten involved in doing webinars, give me your 1-minute version of what makes a good webinar so that firms can think about that as they maybe start to plan these themselves. Who
I'll
wants
go
to?
with that. Sorry. I would say, like you see here, seeing the people's faces, people engage with that. They really need to see that. In the early days, I went on some really formal ones, and it's like, 6 blokes talking one after the other. You don't see them, and all you see is slides, and it just, you feel very detached. It just felt about the content, and they are buying you. That you're part of the equation when they listen to you. They're buying you as part of your brand in your firm, as well as the content and the support you're giving them by giving them the legal updates and the legal knowledge. So I would definitely say make sure they can see you, and obviously make sure you've got a nice background. I've got flowers in mine, but make sure it does feel not messy or anything like that. Just sort out your background, and make sure you've got good Wi-Fi and sound and all that is all sorted. That's my short tips there.
I think if you can incorporate polls or some sort of interactive questions throughout the webinar. I've been on probably hundreds of webinars since this COVID came around, and I think people got excited about polls, and it would be like right in the beginning there was poll after poll after poll after poll, and it got a little bit much. But I think if you throw them in throughout, it's a little bit more interesting. It keeps people engaged. Also, we've done like prizes or like little giveaways of if somebody gets like the answer right or whoever got it right first, just to keep it interesting and gamify it a little bit, because we know how lawyers like to be competitive. So really got their attention with the interactive piece.
And I agree with all of that. And what I would add too, and I think from the ROI perspective and working with lawyers or practice teams, is sort of being really clear that the webinar in a lot of ways is just the beginning. You want putting together product that is on point for your clients and relevant and clients and prospects. But once the webinar is over, that's where the work really begins, I think, in terms of follow-up and knowing who actually was in the room and making sure you have direct communication with the attendees who are of greatest interest to you, and not just saying, okay, well, I did the webinar, I'm going to walk away and go back to my office and wait till next month to do something else. Because that's really where you make the difference.
So let's go reverse order, and Joe, talk about what good follow-up looks like, because I think your point's dead on.
So good follow-up is really what Jessica was talking about earlier, in terms of having dedicated attention to your highest value clients and prospects, and being able to follow up with a call or an email post hoc saying, hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Let's talk about how this might impact you, or do you have further questions on how this may apply to XYZ company? Is there anything else that you want to hear more about in this context? But really just being deliberate and not assuming that just because you gave a presentation on something that all of these clients or prospects will automatically think of you the next time they have that issue. Because like I said, there is so much legal marketing right now. There's always been so much competition for our services. So staying top of mind is still really important. And even though the medium has changed, the actual strategy tactics I don't think have.
So that's an email, a personal email from one of the speakers to attendees that they particularly know or have worked with before.
Yeah, or phone call.
Okay, that's great. Anything in addition to that, Jessica or Tanya?
So I think it's just like Joe said, the follow-up, the follow-up could also be, even if it's not one of the presenters, but maybe another lawyer at the firm forwarding it to a client and saying, if you want, we can do this for you and your team. Take a look at the recording and we can provide CLE credits, or, we'll send lunch over or whatever, if they're in the office. But we could do this, specifically for you and your team, and tailor it to whatever their specific needs are.
Excellent.
I agree. And the other thing we would do straight after all the webinars, we build in a survey, feedback survey straight afterwards, just asking the usual stuff. How was it? Well, blah, blah, blah. Any other subjects you'd like us to cover off. So we'd also incorporate that as well.
So we're going to just do a quick poll. Please just give me a yes or a no here.
Wendy, can I pick up on the point you asked earlier? And I think we all
absolutely.
The part where you posed the question, why should a lawyer forward on a blog? Doesn't want to, or a piece of collateral. He doesn't want to bother the client. I would say we've had this week one of our large legal publications hosted a conference this week, and we attended, and it asked us. It asked the question. It had 3 really big in-house lawyers on this, and they all came back with they wanted their lawyer to phone them, and they just, because they were so big, or they were for whatever reason, they weren't being phoned by their lawyer, and they said they were really disappointed. They didn't want to have a real scheduled every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. They didn't want formalized calling. They were disappointed that their lawyers didn't call them just to say, hey, how are you? A team in the office, how are you at home? How's it going? How are you coping?
Simple check-in.
Yeah, they just wanted that. And they said they were disappointed that they never got that.
Excellent.
So
good point.
Say, you presume that you're bothering your client, but you're not.
Yeah.
Not.
Very good point. Let me ask a little bit about social media. So if pre-COVID, you weren't paying attention to LinkedIn or Twitter, do you think that the volume has been turned up on that individually for lawyers? And if so, what does that look like? What should you consider doing that maybe you wouldn't have done before? Jump in.
So while the lawyers right in the beginning maybe had some more time on their hands, did some LinkedIn trainings, and we had, I think it was like 70% of the firm's lawyers attending these sessions, who really hadn't shown interest. Some of them hadn't really shown interest in LinkedIn or social media before, but now we're interested in learning more about it and how to use it, and how it could help with their with the visibility of their practice and the firm as well. So the LinkedIn training, social media trainings, I thought were really well attended. I've had a lot of follow-ups since then. We've been using LinkedIn a lot more with all of the content that we have. But we also changed it a bit to be less congratulatory, not with just the pandemic, but with also the Black Lives Matter movement. We want to be, very deliberate about our messaging on social issues, and careful and mindful. So we've changed a lot of the tone and the content as well.
Tanya or Joe, anything to add to that?
I've got training sessions that I need to set up, just like Jessica's mentioned on LinkedIn. We are trying to. Some of them love LinkedIn, and some people just are natural to it. So it's just trying to convert the ones that are suspicious still of it, and don't see its value. So I need to do more of the why with them as opposed to just the how. So that's my to-do list.
Yeah, I think that's a similar trend that I've seen, and we've adopted some similar tactics. We've had practice group by practice team, LinkedIn training. So really trying to focus on, as I think that Jessica talked about before, gamifying things in terms of looking at LinkedIn gives us so much data, not only about ourselves, but our competitors, particularly with respect to engagement rates. And really being able to explain to the lawyers in the room, what is an engagement rate? Why does it matter? How does it impact how we get found on LinkedIn and the algorithm? And noting, like, when appropriate, if we have competitors that are performing better than we are, particularly with respect to internal employee engagement on our content. And by doing that, we've made some nice strides in our engagement, and sort of being able to again tap into that competitive spirit, I think has been a helpful tactic for us on LinkedIn. And as Tanya said, there is just we're leveraging LinkedIn for nearly all of our content that we're producing. So our activity is pretty high. And then just my final bit in terms of the why that we talk about is, we see this, we've all seen the surveys from corporate counsel saying that they are there. They may not always be active participants on LinkedIn. They're not going to show up with a comment or a like every time, but they say they're there, and the stats sort of prove that. So making sure that people have complete LinkedIn profiles, because your LinkedIn profile is really just as important as your firm profile, and there's surveys that have said that. So getting people to understand that, LinkedIn in particular, we're not asking people to do anything differently per se, or saying to stop doing the other aspects of marketing and BD, but to recognize that LinkedIn is part of the overall marketing hygiene for successful BD today. And I think that's important to note.
Excellent. So we have a number of younger lawyers, not senior partners, on this call, and I'd love to get your advice. If I am a 3 or a 4 year experienced lawyer, what are your best 2 marketing ideas that I should try to adopt and pay attention to and be active with as I'm starting to think about marketing and business development in my own career?
I'll go first if that's all right.
Sure.
I would say decide on who your referrer base is. Are they accountants? Are you in the property sector? Are they surveyors? Are they architects? Who is your referrer base? So just look at the partners above you. What sector, what type of referrer base do they have? And then just build your own network. They would be charged with trying to build their network. So it's an easy win. Go and find the firms that they're in, find them on LinkedIn, reach out to them. They would more than likely, they'd be happy to connect with you. In your industry bodies, their industry bodies as well, look for the industry bodies. A lot of them have a next generation or junior type of networking events. Join all of those and just cherry pick. Your time is precious. So pick the events that are going to give you the most exposure to meeting other people, and just be yourself. They want to connect with the person. They don't need to connect with Einstein. They're looking for the Einstein lawyer. They're looking to connect with a human being. So really don't worry about you're not this, that, and the other yet. It doesn't matter at all. They're not that either. They're similar level to you in their career, on their career path. So I would say build up your network, and you can track them on LinkedIn, and when they move, you'll get a notification. So you're always tracking their career path.
Excellent. Thank you. Jessica?
I definitely agree with Tanya with building your own referral network, and being a connector is so important. So who are the more junior lawyers across the table from you on a matter that you enjoyed working with? Stay connected with them. Maybe you had fun working together on this matter. Well, start having, a monthly Zoom cocktail or, coffee break. Maybe it's your law school alum. Maybe it's, maybe your first law school or your first law firm out of law school where you worked with a few people. We have several more seasoned partners who that is their referral network, the lawyers that they all worked at Paul Weiss as associates together. So now we're putting on these little wine tastings every other month for all the folks who used to work at Paul Weiss and refer work back and forth to each other. And it's a really great event. So I've been encouraging our more junior lawyers to start doing that now, and they should be the connectors, whether it's a book club or whatever their unique interest is. But you're the one setting up the lunch dates. You're the one setting up, the group dinners, just like you would if it was back in person. And we will be back in person one day. But for now, let's start, even if you want to, meet in the park and have a social distance picnic. We're not encouraging people to do that yet, but, something to think about for the future. But being the connector, being the linchpin is very important.
Excellent, excellent points. Joe?
Yeah, I think those are all really solid points. I think the only thing I would add is just the notion of being deliberate with your marketing and BD time and being habitual about it. I think if you're a third year or fourth year lawyer, you have some experience under your belt, you probably have a sense of what trajectory you're going in and where you sort of want to specialize a little bit. And to be deliberate with your time and just it's okay to wear different hats. And I think we all recognize from a marketing perspective that there are different types of BD styles and marketing styles. And I think when you're in your third year or fourth year, it's a chance to experiment a little bit. And whether it's, maybe the speaking engagements are virtual right now, there's always an opportunity to write. Talk to one of the rainmakers or sort of senior partners that you respect and work with about how they built up their practice, and really just try to make BD a part of your daily habits, because I think we've all seen so many times that you might be a really talented lawyer and you get to year 6 or 7 or 8 and the time is coming for partnership or for sort of what's the next level look like. And all firms have tons of great technical lawyers and sort of the Einsteins, as Tanya said. What makes people different is if you really are to be the connector or networker, as Jessica said. So finding out and being deliberate about how you can interact with people and just try different things, because you never know what's going to stick. The only guarantee with legal marketing is that if you do nothing, nothing will come. So just do something and just keep at it.
That's great, great advice. A couple of you mentioned social events, virtual social events or socially distanced events. Talk a little bit about that. How does that work? Is it something that's you're seeing a lot of or more of, or if I'm interested in starting something like that with some of my good referral sources or clients, how do I go about it?
So we've been hosting a great deal of virtual events. I thought that the events portion of my job was going to be put on a shelf for a while, but instead it's really ramped up. And now we're hosting virtual wine tastings, virtual coming up holiday cheer, cocktail parties. And what's interesting to me is, our extroverts are all about these social networking events, just like they would be in regular times. When we started with the virtual social events, that's when my introverts picked up the phone and called and said, I need help. I'm not good at this. And, shame on me, it didn't occur to me, because these are the people who can give CLE presentations to hundreds and hundreds of people, or they can write all of these articles, and they are in the light and visible, but these social networking interactions were very, very painful. In fact, I read a study from MIT that was recently published where introverts, home was their sanctuary, and now all of a sudden their living room is a coffee shop, it's their office, it's their gym, it's a bar, it's a restaurant, right? And it's very intrusive for those folks to have them, to have all these people in their living room and seeing their lives and not being able to kind of come home and shut it out. So it was a big deal when a couple of them came to me and said, I'm really struggling. So, you know, we got to the root of the issues, and a lot of it was, let's practice. Let's come up with a new elevator speech for these, you know, social networking events, because we can't rely on our old tricks of hanging out by the bar or making fun of the runny eggs at the breakfast buffet to kind of start a conversation like you normally would. And all eyes are on you when you're in this new environment. You're not off having little group discussions. So it's important what you say matters, and that it's interesting, and that you look and feel comfortable. So I did a lot of practice with some of our lawyers, and that included helping them get different lighting, different microphones, where they were going to set up, where they felt comfortable, maybe putting some pieces on the shelf behind them that may be conversation starters, just a couple of touchstones that they could rely on and hold on to in case they got overwhelmed. A lot of our social events, we encourage plus ones. So when we send the wine selections or the box of Christmas or holiday cheer cocktail mixes, in the invitation, we say, you know, you and your quarantine partner, so that whoever they're with, you know, is welcome to join. And then that way, our introverts can also have their plus one with them, which usually when you have an introvert, their partner or plus one is usually an extrovert. It's funny how that works out, but so they have someone there that they've relied on in real life to help them through navigate these situations. So we've kind of navigated everything a little bit differently, and I've made it very clear, you know, I'm here to help you practice. Let's put a half hour on the calendar and let's go through what we're going to say, even though this is a social event and not a presentation. We should still practice if that's going to make you more comfortable.
Excellent, excellent. Other comments on this topic? Joe?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Jessica said. I think we're certainly, I think we've done a fair share of these also and had good results with them. I think what I always worry about a little bit is sort of striking the balance between the connecting and sort of the virtual fatigue that's out there. So I think being, again, not to overuse the word deliberate, but I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach for this. And so really sitting down with the relationship partner or the practice team that's looking to facilitate the session and kind of understanding the goal, the rationale, what the back and forth has been like, so that you can construct an appropriate solution. But I think generally it's a nice concept and it does work well.
And clients are receptive, or referral sources are receptive. They agree to attend your social event by Zoom.
Yes.
Doesn't question.
It helps when you send them the 3 bottles of wine beforehand. You know, once they say, yes, I'm going to come, and then they get this beautiful package in the mail, you know, they're kind of on the hook to come.
Then they're indebted. Excellent.
Exactly. But we make it a group of folks that they want to be hanging out with for an hour or two. So, you know, whether it's they were associates at the same firm together, or, you know, they went to law school together, or have some other sort of bond that makes it, you know, an even more interesting event or something that they want to go to. I attended, we haven't hosted one yet, but a cooking event, and people brought their families, and it was so much fun. You know, some people had their partners, some people were by themselves, but some people had their children in the back chopping up, you know, the doing the prep. And it was just a lot of fun to see people in their kitchens and engaging with one another, having a glass of wine, cooking some risotto. So that was a really fun event as well.
Excellent. So let me ask this question, because all 3 of you are professional communicators. I see no virtual backgrounds in this call. And why is that?
I'll go first, because when we tried to do it, I mean, my Wi-Fi, my broadband just wouldn't let me do it, and every time I moved my hand I'd have like a space around it, so we just took the decision as a firm not to do it. We just couldn't get, but I have been tasked by my senior partner to go and find a product that works, so it's on my to-do list, because we do see some people and their backgrounds seem to work, so I couldn't find one. So that's my answer.
Joe or Jessica?
I just don't have the tech savvy. I'm not. No, I'm not. We just haven't really explored it. A lot of the meetings that we're having are frankly a little bit more substantive, and we just haven't gone down that path.
So for what it's worth, and I'll find the link and circulate it, I've just read a few pieces that say don't use virtual backgrounds because they're buggy and they're fake.
I was using one in the beginning when we were first home, and I didn't have my setup here the way I, was comfortable. And my children came home from college, and then we were all on top of one another and kind of finding that space. But now that we know that this is something that's, even when we do go back to the office in some way, there will still be an element of working from home on some level. So I figured I might as well settle in and get it set up the way that I like it and I'm comfortable with, and just get rid of that barrier of, worrying about what the background looked like, the green screen, and tripping over it and all of that. And I just made the space something that I feel comfortable working in without kind of closing myself off.
The other thing as well, it's I like seeing people's backgrounds, and that's the feedback I've received. You want to see it's part of the person, their environment they're in, so it does speak a lot.
Where do they live?
So it's another touch of getting to know the person you're talking to.
I have a question from our member in Argentina who asks, will networking and business development go back to the original form after the pandemic? Or is this new reality in some form going to stick? And I'd love to get each of your perspectives on that.
So I think that we'll see a hybrid, like we may have already talked about a little bit, a hybrid of events, organizations and conferences that really have gotten a little bit out of control over the past decade or so. We had the recession, 2007, 2008, where, we did away with conferences and slash budgets. They crept back up. And now all of a sudden, our clients want us to, sponsor these huge conferences or huge events, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases. And there's been a reset on those types of things, which I think was coming. I think it's a bit of a silver lining, if you will, that, we've kind of realized that, the partners or folks who would say, have to be there and we have to sponsor and I have to bring 3 people and I got to, all of these things and making it this huge thing. It's, well, we don't have to do that, but let's do something, but maybe, let's shift a little bit or pivot. And I think that the conferences and events that we used to go to as an industry are looking to change how they're going to deliver the same value, but in a different way.
I would say to that, the introverts and the extroverts, moving forward, the introvert having to go into a room of drinks reception with 200 people is probably loving the fact that that's not going to happen for a while. And, the flip side of that is that they can cherry pick to actually have, an intimate, one-on-one or a small group of people doing a wine tasting at home, which might be, make them more productive for them and their personality. So, I think like Jessica says, it's going to be a blend of both types. We'll just have to wait and see, and just as marketeers and BD specialists, we'll just react as quickly as possible.
Excellent. Joe?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Hybrid is the word. I think we'll probably see there'll be probably a big rush at some point once we're in this sort of more of a vaccinated environment where people are really eager to get back together and try to have some of these large gatherings, some medium-sized gatherings. And I think at the same time, this is going to be a real reason for people to think, do I have to hop on that plane? Do we need to really go for a day trip to this city to meet instead of doing something via Zoom? Because I think one of the truths of all law firms over the past year is from a financial perspective, the cost savings from a COVID perspective on BD, on travel, are, they're real dollars. And so I think going ahead and looking at how we're going to make those decisions and sort of understanding the impact from a P&L perspective really is going to cause, I think, things to operate a little bit differently for some of the things that we would probably consider routine a year ago.
Excellent. I'm mindful of the time. We're at the top of the hour. I want to thank you, Jessica and Tanya and Joe, very, very much for your insight and for your time and for opening my emails and agreeing to participate in this. Thank you to our attendees for joining us, and we'll have a video of this up on the site next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.